Hi friends, this is Sarah from Crafting and Relaxing. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today. This is Smash Our Stash, and this is put on by Bourbon Creek Crafts here on YouTube, who is Beth. And the idea is each month there's a theme and we dig into our stash and use things up. And this month was ribbons, strings, fabric, and I think something else. If you're new here, you might not know that I do have a cupboard of shame of fabric, but I had an approach this month to really focus on some things. And what I did was I worked on my jar of scraps, which, it's actually fluffy and there's room in it now, so that's better. And I really wanted to make some tassels, and I tried some in a new style for me. So I was traveling for work one weekend, and then I was traveling for fun the other weekend for the last 2 weekends. I really hadn't gotten around to it before then. I was sick. You know how life is. So I took these bins, and then that way I had to work on scraps and textiles. So I had one bin that was marked tassel making stuff, and then I took just a bin of scraps and craziness. Let me show you what I did with some of the items from the theme this month, and then talk to you about what my approach was. So first, I was cleaning out my tax files before I left. It was partying over here. And I found these manila folders that old tax records were in. So I threw a couple of them in I'm headed out of town and I might need something to collage on. And if you notice, this is a piece of fabric. So everything else in here is paper, or I think this was paper from a bag. This is a map, all kinds of stuff. But I used a piece of fabric. And if you have friends that quilt, they cut you these perfect little strips, so take them. I'm going to cut this into probably journal cards or pockets later. I just haven't gotten that far. Then I added some little bits of ribbon and stuff. If you've been around, you've seen this piece of paper. Yep, still working on it. And I was just digging out my bits. These will become little clusters, something sort of like this, and I have a bunch here. Then I have a piece of fabric here also because, again, I was collaging out of my junk bin and using bits of fabric. So I didn't say I'm going to do a collage of fabric or I'm going to do a collage of paper. I just said I'm going to use some junk up. And this was junk mail underneath it. Then these are tags for clothes. I did some shopping, so I had even more tags for clothes. And I also have been throwing them in my bin when I'm here at home. Tags off of just about anything you buy can be recycled. This one I put a piece of fabric over something on the front. And then on the back, I tore off the price tag and I'll put some tea-dyed paper or something that's nice to write on. This one I was collaging on the front. And I used some ribbon and bits out of my bin. And then again, this one is fabric, ribbon, and paper collage. And then I tied it with some scraps out of my jar. This one, my friend was cutting these perfect little triangles, so I had quite a few of them. And then I added a piece of ribbon. And again, this one's a little thin, so I'll back it with something to write on. These were a bunch of bits that I glued onto, I think it was like a plumbing bill or something. Again, cleaning out the tax files. And I just started gluing onto it. I had put it in the bin because I thought I would collage with it. But then I decided to use these. These are clusters for decorations. They could go on tags. They could go on journal pages. They just add, these tags aren't done. I'll still add something. So they just add some interest and fun. And I used yellow because I use so much blue that yellow is always good. It's just a nice background for me. So little bits and bobs. And the nice thing about doing them on paper like this is if you want it smaller, you just tear it more. And it kind of shrinks the size of the thing down. I wasn't intending for these to be flat because they have so much good stuff on them. So I'm probably not going to add a stamped image on top like I've done some other times, but they could be wax seals or flowers or die cuts, something. I think it would still work. And when I was making these, I was thinking about projects that I'm going to work on. I want to work on a beach journal. I want to do a bunch of nature journals. So some of these I thought would go in pretty nicely. This one, I just had a red sequin thing and stars, and I thought it was fun. If you haven't seen these before, you might be thinking, what is she going to do with them? But you're going to see them in projects and be like, oh, I remember that. It was fun. I love how this one turned out. They were all cut the same length because they were the junk from the tassel making. Instead of throwing them away, I put them on there. Let's talk tassels. I wanted to experiment with whatever these little things are called. They're those little ball hook, I don't know, whatever. And making tassels on them. Now remember, I was traveling, so maybe this wasn't the best thing ever to wrap a tassel with, but it worked. And this was junk. I went through my bin and my boxes and said, okay. And I started laying out on the bed in the hotel room. I'll put a picture in if I have one. I think I do. Things that work together. So here you've got red, white, and blue, and some silver and gold. Here you've got some earth tones that would be great on a nature journal. And I didn't trim this to the same length because I thought it was fun the way it was. But they're not real chunky, so they could go on journals that are maybe a single signature, not super big. And then this one is like a little mini yellow and blue and white and a touch of silver and black. Again, just trash. And then this was fabric and ribbon scraps. I really like how this one turned out. I don't know that I had a plan for this, except, I have a bunch of fabric that I laid out and it works together. And then it helped me figure out, I had some purple that I wasn't sure where to put, so I put that in there. And then this weekend, I decided I wanted to make some tassels out of yarn. And so I made this one, and then I was like, it's not very beachy. And also, it seemed a little skimpy. And so then I made this one, and I put in the sand color. And I think this one will be just wonderful on a beachy journal. What do you think? If you have never made tassels, it is not hard. Not hard. None of these are hard. And part of the reason I started using these is because I have like an Amazon box of them, but I don't have a bunch of the other rings that I've used in the past. I didn't have a bunch of these rings. So be flexible. You don't even need rings. Have a great time. Get your scraps out and start playing. I was starting to really think, maybe I should just dump some of this stuff, but I think this is great, and I got myself some nice variety by playing with them. And because they were already in my tubs of scraps and doodads and bobs, and that might be trash, they were very portable. All I had to do was bring scissors and glue. I did forget a ruler, not to measure things, but I wanted to use it to tear the edges, but then I brought it on the second trip. This is a challenge that really gets you in and using your stash, and you'll see all kinds of great things. I forgot to look up what next month is, but every month is different and they're all fun. Thanks for watching. Be sure to check out the other collaborators using the hashtag down below. Bye-bye.